Pests beware, your fields have heroes. The Pests and Predators podcast is brought to you by Field Heroes and is powered by the Western Grains Research Foundation. Learn how beneficial insects fight pests and protect your crops. Visit fieldheroes.ca today.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Friday edition of the show. Thanks so much, everybody, for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your workday. Also, of course, big shout out to everybody listening out there on the RealAg Radio podcast. We do appreciate it. Just, there's lots of options out there, and the fact that we are one of your streams, one of your downloads, it means a lot to us, as our group is so passionate about bringing you the information, the insight on all the things that are happening on a daily basis here in the world of agriculture. Well, today we got a special treat. We had the Carney cabinet released. We have a new Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food. It is Heath MacDonald. He's an MP out of PEI, continuing in a line. Lawrence McCauley was also from PEI, Wayne Easter from PEI. So I'm interested to hear from Mr. MacDonald. We're going to do that here today on the show. He granted us an opportunity to sit down, and we recorded this Thursday afternoon, and we're going to get to that here in a little bit. So, I appreciate many of you that sent me questions, as I put out on yesterday's show that he was going to be our guest. So I do very much appreciate it. Also on the show here today is Kelvin Heppner of RealAgriculture, and also joining us today on the RealAg Issues panel, of course, will be Tyler McCann, Managing Director at CAPI. Lindsay is off. They are lambing. They're hard at work, busy. I've a little short on pictures. I thought she'd be sending me more pictures, but she hasn't been. They're so busy with everything that's going on over there. So hopefully it's going well with her and Chris getting the lambing done for sure. If you have any feedback on today's program, we'd love to hear from you. Send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also, of course, call the RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. Also take note, it is a long weekend. We talked about this on yesterday's show. May 2-4, May long, whatever you want to call it. As a result, we won't be doing a radio show on Monday. We'll have a replay of the Farmer Rapid Fire. And the other part about it is, too, there's no agronomists on Monday night. So all you agronomist loyalists out there that tune in each and every week, there will be no show on Monday night. But the good news is, you can go back in the archive. Maybe there's an episode you missed. Look at it on YouTube. We also podcast it. It can also be found at realagriculture.com. Just pretend it's live and get caught up. And of course, remember there are those CCA and CEU credits. That is the agronomist. Okay, let's take a break. When we come back, we've got the new Minister of Agriculture. It is Minister MacDonald, and he joins us right after this.
I am your host, Lindsay Smith. Joining me now, Scott Bishop, the National Sales Manager for Exotic Technologies. What is Invita? How does it fit into farmers' operations?
Invita is a naturally occurring bacteria. What this bacteria is able to do is capture that N3 from the air and convert it to a usable form for the plant as the plant calls for nitrogen. So once you get Invita into that plant, it's going to replicate. It's going to spread from the roots up through the plant to the newest growing point. We're one of the very few bacteria that actually gets inside the plant cell. Beyond the yield increase, you're going to see increased root mass. The original fear was it's going to affect nodulation. It does not affect nodulation, but it almost increases it because of the expanded roots under that plant. With corn, you're going to see additional brace roots. All crops, you're going to see a healthier plant because there's no stoppage of that plant growing. That plant, as it demands nitrogen, is going to be able to capture it from the air and convert it into a usable form.
So for those who are interested, where can they go for more information?
To our website, exotic.com.
Peter Johnson at WheatPete, RealAgriculture.com, and what an opportunity! Oh my gosh! You think you can't grow better wheat? You are absolutely wrong. We're going to show you how to strive for those record wheat yields that they get in the UK and in New Zealand. You can grow 150 bushel wheat. I'll show you how.
Catch Wheat Pete's Word every Wednesday on RealAgriculture.com or download the podcast on iTunes or Spotify. And welcome back to RealAg Radio. Hey, at Alliance Seed, every seed starts the story of your success, and our top-performing seed varieties are tailored to meet the unique challenges of your farm. Discover the Alliance difference at AllianceSeed.com. Well, now, as promised, I had an opportunity this week to sit down with the new Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food, Mr. Heath MacDonald out of PEI, and wanted to get his perspectives, what his priorities were, or are, I should say, on the agricultural platform here under the Carney government. Here's our discussion. Shaun Haney here with RealAgriculture.com, and I'm joined right now by the new Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food for Canada, named in the Carney cabinet from this week. It is Minister Heath MacDonald. Minister MacDonald, it is great to have you on the show.
Great to be here, Shaun.
Okay, so I guess starting off, is this a role within cabinet that you aspired for?
No. But you know what, Shaun, my background, where I come from, obviously, it's a farming community. We're in rural Canada. Well, you could consider Prince Edward Island as rural. Yeah. So I've always, my mom's family actually, were all farmers. From pork to beef to potatoes, some grain crops. So I'm very familiar with it, but you know what? There's lots going on in the world today that I'm not familiar with, and I'm here to learn each and every day.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about PEI, but it seems to have a bit of a place as for this role as Minister of Agriculture. Of course, one of your predecessors, Lawrence McCauley, who didn't run, was twice the Minister of Agriculture. So obviously the island is very familiar with the industry for sure. I guess from a priority standpoint, and I know we're a couple days into this. So, but what are some of your top priorities, ambitions for yourself as Ag Minister, and how do you plan to make an impact here in the early days in this role?
Well, I think first and foremost, it's reaching out to my counterparts across the country and understanding regionality and the differences that we have to pay attention to. Making agriculture and agri-food a priority at the cabinet table. Ensuring that, because let's face it, farmer success is my success. And that's not lost on me. Ministers will come and go. Farmers are here to stay. They're providing food to millions of Canadians and millions of people around the world. So we need to recognize the importance of processing and produce and farming in general to ensure that all my counterparts around the cabinet table understand the contribution that farmers make to not only, feeding a country and countries, but the economic value. And I think sometimes that gets lost in the conversation. We get pinpointed sometimes on issues from province to province or regionalities, but the economic value to every province and the farming communities is second to none. And it's not lost on me. It's number one in my province. And so I need to press continuously to the value of farming across the country.
And one of the challenges, I think, in trying to probably communicate the industry's concerns to your fellow members in cabinet and the Prime Minister is the diversity of the industry. If you're the Minister of Transport, you got a couple railways and a few airlines, and their concerns are pretty, in parallel to each other. In agriculture, you talk to a dairy farmer in Abbotsford versus a lentil and grain farmer in Saskatchewan versus what's happening with potatoes in PEI. There's a lot of differences there.
It is, and I think that's what you need to represent. And I think the regionality and the differences of issues, they change from province to province. And I've heard that clearly even in the briefings that I've had to date and the consultations with ministers across the country. I mean, everybody has their issues. Some of them are same, but farmers are farmers are farmers. We need to make sure that they're prosperous. We need to make sure that the government's doing everything it can to enhance their progress. And look, when farmers do well, most economics in every province do well. If farmers don't do well, then they're not going to. So if there's ministers sitting around that table, and I joke you not, that don't understand farming, they will by the time I'm done talking to them, because it will affect them one way or another. So we need to ensure that we are doing everything we can to educate everyone. And I'll be honest, sometimes in media you get wrapped up in issues from province to province to province. But at the end of the day, a farmer on PEI and a farmer in Alberta are the same. Only scale is the difference. And we need to ensure that we are consistent in what we do. The issues may be a little different, but certainly at the end of the day, they're doing the same job.
A question around internal workings of the department. What changes do you foresee for the AFC budget in light of some of the Liberal platform to focus on spending efficiency and your own personal role in terms of dealing with government efficiency? What changes can we expect?
Well, my background came from finance minister on Prince Edward Island, Shaun. So, I respectfully, I get it. We need to be fiscally responsible because that's good for everybody. It doesn't matter what industry or sector you're in. But removing regulation burden, sometimes that doesn't cost anything. Ensuring that, if we're out here talking about new markets and ensuring that we're consistent with other countries on our regulatories, regulation and policy is paramount to be successful. If we're not, for example, if it's taking us 2 years to approve something that's already being used in the EU, that's been approved for a number of years, then we need to change and we need to adapt. And if we don't, we're putting our farmers, our Canadian farmers, at a disadvantage. So these are some of the things that I want to pursue very quickly. And I think, Shaun, to be quite honest, I think the time is right for a reset. Governments need to change at all levels, not just federal, but provincial, municipal. I think we need to adapt. We're not living in the same world we were 5 years ago. So we need to adapt or we're going to be on the losing side of some of this stuff, and we need to move quickly.
The Prime Minister has talked about national unity. Of course, he kind of went with the slogan during the campaign of elbows up. Domestically, there is some fragmentation. The Canadian Shield in the Rocky Mountains can be not only a physical barrier, but a bit of a mental barrier too in bringing people together. So from an agricultural standpoint, how do you plan to do that?
Well, I think it's boots on the ground. I think you need to get to the farms. You need to sit and talk with the farmers, develop some relationships. And look, I'll be quite honest with you. With even the prairie provinces, talking to those ministers, look, their elbows are up. I'm telling you, I was really impressed with the conversations I had with them. Yes, there's issues without a doubt. But you know what? If, like I said to you before, if they're successful, we're successful. And so we need to listen to them. We need to provide the resources and to move forward. But I can tell you there's a lot of unity out there right now, and it's no different among farmers.
When you talk to some of those ministers of agriculture across the provinces, has there been any discussion with those provincial ministers on some of the agri-stability changes that were announced before the election? And what are some of the next steps on that file?
Well, I think, you know what, I'm knee deep in this stuff right now, and I'm learning as I go on some of these issues. But there was discussions. Look, there was a broad range of discussions, Shaun, on many topics, believe me. But I think I have to listen to industry and parlay that information back to the officials here in Ottawa. And that's exactly what I'm doing. But still, I've got lots to learn, without a doubt, and I'll learn each and every day. But back to boots on the ground, I think that's the most important thing, is to develop those relationships and get to those farms across the country as soon as possible.
Well, maybe I'll see you at the Calgary Stampede.
Hey, all right, sounds good.
at that big reception. So, from a trade perspective, one of the criticisms that stakeholders in the industry have had is that there wasn't enough focus on developing markets and trade access during the Trudeau government. What are your thoughts there to increase exports of agricultural products?
Well, we don't have a choice. We had one of the largest bilateral agreements with the U.S. in trade. So, and we know how fragile and fluid that is. Yeah. So I think right now, any government that doesn't act on that is going to be a weak government. And I'm not going to sit part of a weak government. So we need to move as quickly as possible. Trade is certainly something that we need to do, diversification, and to do more domestically at home. And whether that's building out our processing, that's important as well. So we just need to move quickly, and we need everybody on the same page.
Yeah. when do you intend to reach out to USDA Secretary Brooke Rollins?
She's already reached out, actually, and
nice.
so I hope to have a visit with her in the near future. I've been to Washington now 3 times in the last few months on trade issues prior to getting this post, of course. But so I think that's extremely important as well. I mean, look, this face-to-face, I think, is building that relationship and understanding one another's needs, even through all the political tentacles of politics. I think it's important to have that relationship going forward.
Is there plans to have a G7 agriculture ministers meeting?
That's more than I can tell you, Shaun. You're the first one to ask me that, but it's an interesting question.
Okay. What about the China tariffs? China has put tariffs on aquaculture products, Canadian pork, Canadian canola oil, and meal. Obviously, this is in response to those EV tariffs. What's your message to the Prime Minister and your members of Cabinet on that issue?
Well, anything to do with the tariffs is very fluid from either of those countries, the U.S. or China, and I think we have to pay attention to what's happening. I've had great discussions already with the Canola Council of Canada, I think it is. I get that right.
Yeah.
We had a good discussion yesterday with them on that, so I'm trying to get up to speed as fast as possible. Next week, I'll be meeting with the ambassador to China. Canadian ambassador to China. We have a meeting set up, so it's kind of a next step for me to ensure that what I'm doing. We talked yesterday to a consultant that's actually in China right now, trying to get up to speed. So, talking and doing everything I can to educate myself on the situation, and talking to farmers as well. So it's ongoing. It's a fluid situation. How we deal with it's my job is to keep it on the front of the table and ensure that we continue to talk about it at Cabinet and with the Prime Minister. And I don't think that's going to be a problem because he's very rehearsed in it and he understands the importance of it.
This discussion that we're having, I know we're almost up against a hard stop here, so I'll finish up. I just want to learn a little bit more about Minister Heath MacDonald himself. What do farmers and ranchers across the country and some more American audience here on Sirius XM who's going to be very interested in Canada's new ag minister? What do they need to know about you? What's your superpower? What's that thing about you that you think that people are gonna really, really appreciate in this role from your perspective?
That's a tough question, Shaun, but you know what? Look, I'm determined. I'm determined to make a difference. I'll do everything I can at this level to do that. I don't take no lightly, and my will is to find a way, and let's find a way, and to make farming as good as it can be, especially in these difficult times. But what you see is what you get. I'm not going to change. I'm going to be a dog with a bone, and we'll see where it takes me.
Great stuff. We've been talking to the new Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food for Canada. It is Mr. Heath MacDonald. Minister MacDonald, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you, Shaun.
That was the new Minister of Agriculture in Canada. It is Mr. Heath MacDonald. Really appreciate the time and opportunity to be able to bring him on the show here and be able to talk to farmers and ranchers across the country. Well, give me your perspective. What do you think? Did you like what you heard? Do you think that there are some things that were missed? Maybe some questions. I had a whole list. I got to talk to him for 2 hours. So first opportunity, won't be the last. Really looking forward to getting to see what he does with AFC and the agricultural platform in Canada, and how much rope is he given under this Carney government? Is there really an opportunity to shake things up, to really move some files forward? We will have to see. Time will tell, and we'll definitely be following it very closely. You can send me your feedback, shaney@realagriculture.com. Hey, pest beware, your fields have heroes. The Pest Predator podcast is brought to you by Field Heroes and powered by the Western Grains Research Foundation. Learn how beneficial insects fight pests and protect your crops. Visit fieldheroes.ca to learn more. We'll be right back with more of RealAg Radio. We'll bring in the RealAg Issues panel to break down what we just heard from Mr. MacDonald right after this.
Find everything you need for outstanding weed control in your wheat and barley from the cross-spectrum herbicide experts at Corteva. Corteva is proud to offer a wide selection of cross-spectrum herbicides for maximum convenience, effective resistance management, and customized control of your toughest grassy and broadleaf weeds. No matter what kind of weed challenges you're experiencing, we've got the right fit for your farm. Visit Corteva.ca to learn more.
Canola is more than just a pretty face in the prairie landscape. It's a big business, both here and around the world, that requires you to be informed and up to date on everything it takes to grow a successful crop. The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com has an expert library of video resources covering markets, agronomy, and more to help you grow a healthy and profitable canola crop. Visit canolaschool.com today. Brought to you by BASF Canada and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
I'm Lindsay Smith from RealAgriculture.com. Join me Monday nights for The Agronomists, a 1-hour live and interactive show broadcast across YouTube, Facebook, and X. Monday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, I host expert agronomists from all over the country to give you answers to some of the toughest agronomic questions. Join us live or catch the replay Tuesday morning. That's The Agronomists with me, Lindsay Smith, Monday nights live at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Yeah, welcome back to RealAg Radio. Hey, with volatile markets and rising costs, now's your chance to be a part of the solution. It's time to secure your future with Genesis Fertilizers. Gain control and ensure access to locally produced nitrogen. Act now to protect your farm's future for generations. Visit genesisfertilizers.com to learn more. Let's talk with the RealAg Issues panel. Up first, it is Kelvin Heppner coming out of Altona, Manitoba. Kelvin, how are you?
Doing well, Shaun. A bit rainy here. Weather has really turned this week. We started the week really hot and dry, got a lot of seeding done, and things have turned cold and rainy here. So, typical May long weekend weather that we're seeing here.
Yeah, plus 30 degrees Celsius earlier in the week. You were like...
we were like 37, 38. We were over 100 degrees
Fahrenheit.
Fahrenheit.
Like 100. Oh, wow.
For 3 days. And now we've got a frost warning this weekend.
Welcome to May. Yeah, we were like that last weekend, and it cooled off all week. We actually got a little bit of rain here on the end of this week, which has been nice, and it can keep on coming because we are thirsty in southern Alberta. Joining us also is managing director at CAPI. It is Tyler McCann. Hey, Tyler, how are we doing?
I'm doing well, Shaun. Great to be with you again.
No Lindsay today.
No, I'm the sole Eastern Canadian voice. We've got to hold down the fort, remind everyone across the country that, Eastern and Western voices both matter.
Well, after you being so wrong in the bonus segment last week, I've given you a chance to come back and redeem yourself. Is really what
I don't think defending Canada as a country that yes could be better, but is better together is a wrong thing, Shaun. And I'm sure we have other things to talk about today. Rather than getting into that again.
Well, we had a ton of feedback. I do encourage everybody, if you did miss last Friday's RealAg Radio podcast, to please go back and listen to, you can listen to the whole show. It was great, but also the bonus segment where we had a lot of fun. We got fired up and we got tons of feedback from the audience and do appreciate that. Okay, we just heard from the new Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food, Mr. Heath MacDonald, MP out of Prince Edward Island. For any Canadians or Americans listening, if you've never been to PEI, I highly encourage you to go there. I advise you to go in the summer, not the winter, but it is spectacularly beautiful. And Kelvin, I don't know what's in the water in PEI, but it does produce ag ministers. Of course, Lawrence McCauley also from PEI. Wayne Easter was from PEI. What is your takeaway from what we heard from Minister MacDonald?
Well, I'd say first of all, he comes across as I'd say likable in terms of a politician and transparent. Maybe transparent is the biggest word, because he admitted right off the top that he has lots to learn, and he even admitting that he didn't actually aspire to be ag minister. It sounds like it was actually a bit of a surprise earlier this week when Mark Carney or his office called and said, "Hey, you want to be a cabinet minister? Want to be the Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food?" Sounds like it was maybe a bit of a surprise. So I'll give him full credit for being upfront on that, and kind of, I think he even used the phrase "what you see is what you get" with me, kind of thing, and that was my first impression from that conversation as well. And so I guess the big question now is how quickly he can actually get up to speed. Agriculture has a lot of technical things that you got to learn and details you got to understand, and what that process looks like and who he's going to lean on as there are decisions that he needs to make here in the coming weeks, and we'll have to see how quickly the competency part of being the Minister of Agriculture comes around for Minister MacDonald.
Yeah, similar a little bit to, I was around the first couple weeks with Secretary Rollins in the U.S., and one thing that stuck out to me, very similar to Minister MacDonald, is boots on the ground. I'm going to be meeting with farmers. I want to hear from them directly about their concerns, where the opportunities are. That felt very similar to the kind of the strategy that Rollins has had as well, which I think has served her well with farmers and ranchers across the U.S. Tyler, what did you hear from Minister MacDonald?
Yeah, I want to second that statement about that transparency piece. I think he really comes across as a genuine minister. I think he could be a good example of my belief that you don't need to know agriculture. What you need to do is be motivated and want to get things done. So I think that there certainly seems like some reason for optimism there. I think that real understanding that he's got to talk to his provincial counterparts, got to talk to farm groups, is important. I think what is a big question in my mind, though, and where the rubber hits the road is, okay, when decisions need to get made, what's going to drive that decision making at the end of the day, right? So he's going to go out and he's going to hear from governments, from farmers, from his department, a lot of different things. But when he actually needs to make a decision, who does he lean on? Which side does he err on? But I think that there was this great kind of sense of disappointment that Cody Boyes wasn't minister. You had a good piece on that, Shaun. But a lot of the things that he spoke about, trade as a priority, the need for regulatory reform and competitiveness, echo many of those things that Cody Boyes has talked about. And I think echo a lot of the reasons why people were hoping that he would go back. So I think hopefully we'll see that continue through with Minister MacDonald, and I hope that we'll see action now on his part and a real sense to drive things forward.
Yeah, there's a chance here for things to go. I'm interested in how much push he has, right? When being influential in cabinet, is that opportunity there, or late draft pick to cabinet? Yeah, you know what? You're in cabinet, but just, sit over there while the grown-ups have a conversation. Time is going to tell, and maybe it's topic specific, but we've heard a lot from the Prime Minister about action-oriented, and we're going to do this, and national unity, we're going to bring the country together, and things are going to be different. And agriculture obviously can be a big part of that. And the test here is this whole communication flow. Are you a liaison from government to farmers, or are you a liaison from farmers to government? And I'm hoping for the latter. And I'm going to keep my fingers crossed on that. I hope he is that person, but we'll have to see.
But Shaun, I don't think that's an either or thing, right? I think you framed that a bit wrong, because ultimately what he needs to be is both. And I think an effective minister has got good relations with his stakeholders, but has also got good relations with the Prime Minister and his cabinet colleagues. And so I think he needs to be able to do both if he wants to have an impact at the end of the day. And again, RealAg has got a column I wrote about 5 things I think that the minister needs to do if he wants to have an impact that people should check out. But it's about, in my mind, focus and ambition and relationship building and empowering the department and engaging with his stakeholders. And again, I get the sense that he's there, right? He's got focus, talking about trade, talking about regulatory reform. He's talking to his provincial counterparts. He seems to have support from the Prime Minister. Hopefully he'll empower his department. There's some smart people there. He's got a very good deputy minister that could do some really good things working with him. So it remains to be seen kind of how much he leans into that. But there's, I think, good reason to be optimistic.
Thanks for bringing up that column that you wrote. Want to encourage everybody to check out their Saturday RealAg email, because it's really about the cabinet pick. It's the interview with the minister. It's Tyler's column. It's my column about Blois being cut. There's a lot of stuff in there from top to bottom, all about what happened this week from a cabinet and agriculture perspective. And if you do not get our emails, you can go to realagriculture.com/subscribe and subscribe to the Western or Eastern email to do that. Kelvin, he mentioned BRM. Okay, so that's Business Risk Management Program. Regulatory, that was the really encouraged one that kind of caught me off guard. One of the things that we can do that doesn't cost us any money is cut regulations. That's that's a little bit more in what we had, like Tyler said, we heard from Blois. And of course, trade is another one. And I think it's encouraging. We waited for weeks after Brooke Rollins became the secretary for Lawrence McCauley and her to make some point of contact. Brooke Rollins' office reached out this week. So I think that is a good sign on the trade front.
Yeah, you're right. And again, there's a lot of detail to these files, and he's hitting the high level, broad topics that agriculture knows are priorities, and this is why people, I think, were so disappointed and frustrated this week that Cody Blois wasn't named the Ag Minister, because Cody does already know these issues quite well and is well versed on them and can communicate well on them. So now it's a question of how quickly Minister MacDonald can get up to speed on them. And I'm not sure whether we haven't really talked about on the why part about Blois not being in cabinet. It looks like geographic representation was certainly a factor, if not the only factor, with two other cabinet ministers coming from Nova Scotia. MacDonald being appointed the Ag Minister because PEI had been left out of Carney's cabinet the first time around after he won the Liberal leadership back in March. So in that sense, Shaun, you asked earlier whether he's filling a seat in cabinet, a late pick kind of thing. It's not really promising in terms of it sure looks like that is the case. MacDonald was chosen to represent Prince Edward Island and filled kind of that check that box in terms of the cabinet makeup. And so I also wonder whether Cody was too much of a go-getter. And again, this is troubling potentially for what we expect for agriculture. And most of the people I've talked to this week say no, that Carney likes go-getters, but to me there's mixed signals there, because the people running the PMO around Carney certainly have to worry about running a tight ship. And I wonder whether Blois was too aggressive in terms of pushing, kind of being that liaison for agriculture to government instead of government to agriculture kind of thing, and whether the balance there was against him in terms of being a pick to cabinet.
Tyler, quickly on that, what do you think?
I disagree. I think by all accounts, if you look at what Mark Carney has said and continues to say about his desire to make change and transformation, based on what we hear about kind of the scuttlebutt in Ottawa and the decisiveness of the Prime Minister's office and how it works today, I just don't see that as an issue. The reality is geography is a major factor in cabinet making. The reality is that you can only have so many ministers from Nova Scotia, and unfortunately these are what they are. And as much as people want to shrug that off, had Manitoba, Saskatchewan, or Alberta been left without a cabinet minister, people would have been pissed. So geography does matter. It is important.
Oh.
And I think
Saskatchewan was left. Saskatchewan was left without a minister.
You will get into a debate around secretaries of state and ministers of state, but Bucky Belanger is there and got a portfolio, an appointment on Monday. It's not easy making cabinets, and I think Mark Carney made some sensible choices, even though, yes, it would have been nice to see Cody Blois back as minister. So,
and then I'm not sure if we would talk about this in the next segment, but look at all the cabinet ministers that messed up in their first media appearances coming out of that cabinet meeting. I'm thinking the time to run a tight ship and crack the whip on cabinet is coming, if it hasn't already started. I know Carney is all about go-getters and bold moves and that kind of thing, but the people around him, his chief of staff, is certainly has his hands full with the comments coming from people like Stephen Guilbeault and other ministers coming out of the cabinet meeting that were obviously they weren't on the same song sheet yet as Prime Minister Carney. So to me, that time is coming if it isn't already in terms of cracking the whip on cabinet.
Well, yeah, Guilbeault. Oof. Thanks. If you were trying to do stuff in terms of like, don't worry, it's going to be different, national unity, everything's going to be good, and Guilbeault's out there slamming the TMX pipeline.
Showing he hasn't changed a bit. And he's the Minister for Canadian Identity, which certainly energy policy is a huge part of identity discussions right now. So certainly not a promising signal there in terms of, to me, this wasn't a good week for the Carney government in terms of demonstrating change from the previous regime.
Okay, we're going to take a break. We got more to discuss here on the RealAg Issues panel. But first, Alliance Seed. Every seed starts the story of your success, and our top-performing seed varieties are tailored to meet the unique challenges of your farm. Discover the Alliance difference at allianceseed.com. Tyler McCann of CAPI, Kelvin Heppner with Real Agriculture. Be back right after this.
If you're involved in the agriculture industry, it's important to stay informed on all the latest issues affecting your business. At RealAgriculture.com, we offer fast, reliable news, information, and insights to help you keep on top of all of the latest in Canadian agriculture. Visit RealAgriculture.com and sign up for our free daily newsletter covering everything from news, agronomy, animal agriculture, and much more. Visit RealAgriculture.com/subscribe today. It's summertime, and you've got a lot of important decisions to make when it comes to your corn crop. Let the Corn School on RealAgriculture.com help guide you through those big decisions with input from leading experts in the field. If it's spray timing, disease identification, or any other field issue, the Corn School's got you covered. The Corn School on RealAgriculture.com, brought to you by BASF and Pride Seeds.
Pest beware, your fields have heroes. They come with capes. The Pest and Predator podcast is brought to you by Field Heroes and powered by the Western Grains Research Foundation. Learn how beneficial insects fight pests and protect your crops. Visit fieldheroes.ca to learn more. Tyler McCann of CAPI, Kelvin Heppner of Real Agriculture, and myself, Shaun Haney, breaking down the biggest issues of the week. Tyler, you disagreed with Kelvin at the end of that segment. You wanted an opportunity to reply?
Yeah, I think one of the problems that we have in this world that we live today is that on one hand, we say we want a cabinet that's empowered. We want a prime minister's office with less control. And as soon as we see something a little bit wobbly from that on day one of the cabinet, you know, people like Kelvin freak out and say, no, we can't actually have empowered ministers.
Okay,
we can't actually, have these governments that say different things. We need the prime minister to come in and rule with his iron fist. And I just disagree. It was clearly a bumpy week for the prime minister, but
I see what he's doing.
I want a government that's got ministers like Minister MacDonald that are empowered to make decisions and do things.
Like Minister Guilbeault?
I absolutely will not defend anything Stephen says. Very firmly draw the line on that. I think that that's clearly unfortunate comments from a minister with a strong ideological perspective that does not seem to line up with what the prime minister's saying.
Exactly right.
I do not understand why he ended up in the position that he's in, but that doesn't take away from the fact that what I want is ministers that can get things done for Canadians. And I don't want to kind of force this back to, you know, you can only say what PMO tells you to say. That might be what Kelvin wants.
This is not a binary thing. There are different ranges of things that ministers should be given some rope to run with.
And the point I was making was maybe it hurt Blois how much of an passionate advocate he was for agriculture in his short time as minister, whether that was points against him in terms of putting him into cabinet because he might be seen as advocating strongly for agriculture and not being that liaison from government to agriculture is the point I was trying to make. I agree with you, Tyler. We should have empowered cabinet ministers.
Okay, I want to just pivot here. So, we had the president's trade team come back over the weekend from China. Canada has some struggles, of course, with China on tariffs related to aquaculture, pork, canola meal, and canola oil. No trade deal done. Really, basically, just like we both agree that we're stabbing our economies in the heart here if we don't back off. I think a lot of the media focused on who won, who lost. I think both just decided we need to just peel this back a little bit. Any Canadian angle to this, Tyler, that worth mentioning, or what we should be watching out for?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. I think given how, especially in agriculture, intertwined Canadian agriculture is with the export markets around the world, anything that China and the U.S. agreed to has an impact in Canada. First, important, John, like they weren't in China, right? They were in Switzerland.
They met in Geneva, yes.
Yeah, but I think it's just important context, right? Like this is kind of a very delicate dynamic. This is a space where they're trying to find neutral territory. I know that probably a lot of American listeners are going to be saying, like, yeah, the Americans won. I really think that we need to keep coming back to this dynamic where the Americans didn't win. The Americans backed down and got themselves back to a point that's still kind of worse than things were before. This isn't some major victory. This is trying to clean up after the mess that they've got created. But this instability and unpredictability in global markets is not good for anyone at the end of the day. And I think that the markets are making better sense of this kind of U.S. approach of do something crazy and then walk it back a month later. And you can see I think you see that based on the market reactions. But, Canada's negotiating its own, or needs to get to the point where it can negotiate its own solution with China. And until we get some certainty around what the U.S.-China relationship looks like, I think it's going to be very hard to get certainty with what the Canada-China relationship looks like.
Okay, so here's what I wonder. I wouldn't get out in front. Well, I'm going to say this, and you guys correct me. My first reaction is I wouldn't get out in front of it. Like, I wouldn't try to do something with China prior to the U.S. and China sorting out their mess. I would come in afterwards. I think if you come out in the meantime, like in between them at this point, you are putting a target on your back, and you are all of a sudden the key leverage point, more so than we traditionally have been. Kelvin, what's your reaction to that? Am I right or am I wrong?
Well, I think I tend to agree with that, Shaun. And this is something I think, was it last week we talked about whether there's a window here if there was a de-escalation, and there certainly was last weekend between the U.S. and China, whether there's a window here for Canada to back down on its tariffs on Chinese imports, and as a result, resolve some of these issues on our agricultural exports. And yeah, I think that would probably put a target on Canada's back. But in general, to me, whether we're talking about the U.S.-China negotiations, the UK trade deal from last week, Carney's meeting in D.C. last week, what's the meetings and announcements that have been happening in the Middle East this week, there's a lot of de-escalation. There's a lot of, I don't know whether you call it backing down, retreat, reality setting in, common sense prevailing. There's a lot of that happening, and I think it sends a signal to countries around the world, including Canada, that if you sit and wait, some of this bluster passes over. And sure, there's a 10% baseline tariff for most countries that's remaining in place, but a lot of this aggressive action that Trump came into office with, as we get closer to midterms, it sure looks like reality and the risk of inflation, the risk of the bond market, treasuries getting upset, that type of thing, is certainly reality is setting in, and I think a lot of countries are going to try to slow play this now.
Well, which is kind of Mexico's strategy. That gets us back to where President Sheinbaum was the one that wasn't saying, hey, we're going to retaliate. We're going to be tough, elbows up. We're going to do dollar for dollar on the retaliation. Mexico's like, okay, we'll look and see what happens, and we'll investigate. And this is exactly what she has been doing this entire time. So maybe a lot of people did have it right. Mexico's has the right playbook on this.
And Shaun, I think that there's two other things to keep in mind. One, by all accounts, quite quietly, Canada has removed a lot of its retaliatory tariffs.
Yeah, what's up with that?
And so I think what it is cooler heads prevailing in the Canadian context, and a recognition that retaliatory tariffs hurt Canada far more than they hurt the United States. But it does seem like it was done very quietly and without a lot of fanfare.
I don't know if it's been done officially. I think it's more on an exemption type basis. Right. So I think they're granting exemptions. And so, because I went scouring through Finance Canada's website yesterday, and there's no official announcement of a back down on tariffs.
Boy, if you are a voter and if you voted for Carney because you were like, oh, the relationship with the Americans is over, boy, were you fooled?
No, but I don't think that's true at all, Shaun. I think, again, there's a difference. I think we get caught up right in these kind of high profile Twitter sound bites about tariffs up or down, right? What the Prime Minister has done, and I think what you see the government trying to do and what the Cabinet's trying to do, is we need to reset this. We need to fundamentally do things differently. And the tariffs are only a small piece of that much bigger puzzle of doing things differently. And I think that's the second thing that I wanted to mention was, you talked about making a deal with China, right? I think that there's a lot of things that you need to do before you get to making a deal. And I don't think that the new government should be rushing out to try and, fix things with China right away, but they need to re-engage. And we need to see some efforts around rebuilding and resetting that relationship. But again, it's not going to be how it was before. We need to understand that this isn't something that we're going to go back to 2010 or 2000. I don't know when we actually had real good, meaningful relationships with the Chinese government were, but But these things are different. The context is different. The government's trying to navigate that, and it's not an easy thing for them to do.
Kelvin, did you catch on to what's happening here? McCann is like the official leader of the Carney Booster Club, talking about how it's a good thing to reduce these tariffs. Meanwhile, when the Conservatives weren't talking, they were slow on responding to the American tariffs, and everybody was like, Carney's, Trudeau, they're retaliating. This is good for business. This whole retaliation is what actually got Carney elected. There's a real interest. There's some irony here.
I think what got Carney elected are Justin Trudeau's, the poor precedent that he set in him leaving, concern not over tariffs, but over Trump's view around the 51st state. And the Conservative leader that was seen by 44% of Canadians as not a legitimate choice for dealing with the Prime Minister or dealing with the President. I mean, the reality is, Shaun, what I firmly am on the side of is I want a government that gets things done. I want a government that gets results and takes action. And clearly it's been a bumpier ride than I would have liked it to be with a new government, but I'm still hopeful.
Well, I want to be on the right.
Do we need a budget? Do we need a budget to set that direction, Tyler?
Oh, that's a good question.
I think what we need are spending bills, and we'll get one of those when Parliament is back.
I think the paper that he signed in the office this week. That's it.
No,
right?
I mean those.
Oh, okay.
Those are very clearly gimmicks.
Can we talk about what the heck we are doing? Like, I don't want to do this whataboutism, but I will just say this: if it was Pierre Poilievre sitting at a desk signing fake executive orders, which we do not have in Canada, can you imagine the outrage? But in this case, it's just good marketing. And I'm not, it's at the end of the day, it's not a huge deal, but why? What are we doing?
I think it is good marketing, right? I think people like to see it. Shaun, we get the governments that we deserve, right? And if Canadians want to eat up the fake executive orders, then governments are going to do fake executive orders. This is, really? don't blame the player, blame the game. And I think that's different than the budget, where clearly it would have been better for us to have a budget for the country to kind of set out the direction that it's going in. But, the timelines are tight, and if they want to take some extra time to get a better sense of where are we going on a fiscal track, I don't think
I think we need to codify, I think we somehow need to codify better, the timelines on budgets and the requirement of it. I think Canadians deserve that clarity.
I mean, I think it is effectively codified. We should have a budget by now. There are effectively rules in place that say the government should set out its fiscal plan.
And that's conservative and liberal. This is not a part of any government. I don't care if the Green Party is the leading the government. We need a budget. We need a budget. Okay, we got to take a break. Maximize productivity and profitability with an innovative all-in-one approach to farming, combining accounting, business planning, agronomic field planning, and advanced technology. MMP Ag Intellect delivers. Find out more by going to mmp.ca. You're listening to RealAg Radio. We'll be back right after.
If you only listen to RealAg Radio, you only get half the picture. For greater insight into the issues that affect farming, tune in to RealAgriculture.com. Crops, livestock, machinery, farm management, and the markets, even food and travel. Real Agriculture Online digs deeper into the topics that affect the way you work and live. So get connected today. Read, watch, and listen to the people who know at RealAgriculture.com.
How's your seed quality? What should you treat with? What about herbicide carryover and environmental concerns? Spring is here, and you've got a lot of things to think about in regards to your pulse crop. The Pulse School on Real Agriculture has information and advice for all these questions and more to help you navigate this season. Brought to you by BASF. Pulse School episodes are available at pulseschool.com, realagriculture.com, or as a podcast on your favorite streaming service. Download the latest episode today.
And we are back here on RealAg Radio. I want to encourage everybody to check out realagriculture.com over the weekend and make sure you get caught up on everything that's going on. Like I mentioned, we are going to have that interview you heard earlier with Minister MacDonald posted at realagriculture.com. It's up now, actually, so check it out. It's tagging time, and CCIA has you covered. The online web store is your one-stop shop for approved beef cattle tags and pre-approved cervid and goat tags. Order anytime, anywhere. It's fast and reliable. Visit tags.canadaid.ca, your trusted source of traceability. Tyler McCann of CAPI, Kelvin Heppner, RealAgriculture, and Tyler, I know you have goats, so make sure you go to tags.canadaid.ca for those goat tags that you need. Okay, Kelvin, let's put it in perspective. AFC, the department, Minister MacDonald, next 100 days, what is something you would like to see them push across the line and do? How can they make an impact?
Oh man, first of all, to me, he's got to show that he's invested in this position and that he cares about being the ag minister and that he cares about agriculture and what he says when he talks about delivering for farmers across the country and improving farms' bottom lines and recognizing the economic value of the country. So there's different ways he can do that, and one of those is by showing that he is serious about studying up and understanding these different files. One would be the exports to China issue and tariffs with China, and I'm not sure the way the Chinese government works, whether much of that can happen in public, but he's got to demonstrate some sort of action on that file, certainly for farmers across Western Canada. We saw Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe this week issue a list of I think it was 10 different things they'd like to see from the federal government, the new federal government, and number one on the list was addressing the canola tariff issues. So to me, there's got to be some movement on that. Agri-stability, of course, there was the announcement on the eve of the election by Minister Blois of changes to agri-stability that basically was a proposal, and we'll have to see now whether there's action on that. That's another one that he could act on. General, though, I just want to see proof of him being invested in this position. He's been appointed to it, didn't expect to be appointed to it, and now show that he's serious about delivering in terms of being the ag minister for our country.
Tyler, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree on trade. A couple things I'd add. I would like to see him get to every provincial capital across the country before the July FPT meeting, actually get out of Ottawa, meet with his provincial counterparts in person, meet with farm groups and farmers, food processors across the country. I would like to see him also, again, follow through on what Blois started on regulatory reform. Yeah. I'd like to see him take the $200 million that they committed in the platform for food processors and give that money to FCC and tell FCC to go invest that and have an impact with it. And I think that those are concrete things he can do before that July FPT meeting that will make a difference and show that he's serious about getting results for the sector.
You know, it really is interesting. You know, farm groups were really changing the things they were focusing on in their messaging, and they were pivoting, preparing for a conservative government. And it's like, okay, pivot back, right? But they're probably trying to figure out where this government lands, which is probably somewhere in the middle of what they thought they were going to have to do. So that's kind of fun to watch.
I'm also curious where Blois lands. I don't think we've seen the last of him in agriculture, and so looking forward to finding out in the next week or two, maybe before Parliament starts, where he's going to be involved, whether it's just as a backbencher or on the House Ag Committee, or whether there's a different role for him.
Yeah, absolutely. The regulatory. That's one where I think they can show they're different than the Trudeau government. Yeah. Like, I really do. Like, that one stuck out to me in that discussion earlier, is that regulatory piece of, it doesn't cost us anything. Let's look at how do you increase efficiency. Like, the fact they're talking about efficiency, that's different, everybody. Like,
Yeah, and that's where I think as much as people may be pivoting away from what they thought a conservative government might do, Shaun, they're not pivoting back to how things were under a Trudeau government. This government is absolutely talking about different things. I mean, Cody Blois in a week did more on regulatory reform and agriculture than all of his predecessors did in 10 years. It's different.
Bad news, we're out of time. Good news is there's going to be a bonus segment for everybody listening to the RealAg Radio podcast, so stay tuned for that. Those of you on Roll Radio, you can send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com, or you can call the RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. Kelvin, last word.
Happy birthday, Shaun. Everybody, it's Shaun's birthday today.
Oh, yes, thank you. And happy anniversary coming up here in a couple days to my wife as well. I got to get that in there. Thanks, everybody, for getting real and getting connected with RealAg Radio. We'll chat again next week. Cheers, everybody. Welcome to the bonus, which maybe we need to rebrand like the toe-to-toe section of all of this. But fun show today. It was great to have Minister MacDonald on. Really do appreciate, there's a lot of stuff happening in the first couple days of naming of a new cabinet, and the fact that, and also a part of this is like a lot of times it's like, it needs to be by phone. They made it happen by video, so we have video of it as well. So I do appreciate the staff over there at AFC for making that all happen, and I'm sure it's not the last time we'll talk to Minister MacDonald. Kelvin, what did we not get to that we really should be talking about here? Does anything come to mind?
I'm curious, following this screwworm issue, cattle moving from Mexico into the U.S. or not moving anymore, and the impact that will have on our beef supply in North America and beef market. We've seen, of course, prices at record high levels here the last couple of weeks, and what happens if those cattle from Mexico can't move north in a timely fashion. And I listened to a podcast. Jacob Shapiro actually has a great podcast out this week about
he said that to me. Yes, I've
world screwworm. And I didn't realize the history of this pest and how serious it was in the U.S. from the 30s basically to the 80s, and the impact it can have, and kind of how governments have kind of neglected it, and society has neglected this pest, and here we are, it's raising its head, kind of like measles right now as well in humans. And screwworm could actually be a human pest as well, and there's some concern they talk about in this podcast about the unhoused population, homeless people in the southern U.S. It's a major risk for them if this comes to the U.S. And so to me, there's lots of different things, and this is maybe not getting the attention it should in mainstream that the screwworm issue should be getting.
Well, if it does hit mainstream, and there is a little bit, I think the Wall Street Journal's had that it's accurate. That is,
yeah, exactly. That's always.
We were talking about this during one of the commercial breaks today, where it is always a reminder where it makes me question some of the accuracy of mainstream media when on other topics you don't know a lot about. Where you're like, oh, that's interesting, that's insightful, or that I didn't know that. When they go into the ag stream, it's like, whoa, that is not true. And it always makes me question. So I hope it is covered accurately. Tyler, it's 1.2. I think it's 1.2 million feeder cattle a year coming out of Mexico into the U.S.
And again, as Kelvin mentioned, the beef prices in Canada across North America have already been much higher than they have been historically. I mean, we've seen such a significant growth. It's hard to kind of fully understand what this might mean going forward. It also does highlight, we really do have, I know we don't like the word integrated, but complementary supply chains in North America where products do need to move north and south. And this is going to be, again, a real life example of what happens when that can't happen, when we can't move products across the border. And again, I think we'll really push U.S. feedlots that rely on those Mexican imports into trying to find better solutions for this. I mean, we need borders that work. We also need borders that control animal health issues. And this is the tough position the government's in, trying to find that balance.
Well, and we do know this as well, that disease experts and health specialists on the animal side, between Mexico, Canada, and the U.S., they have experience in working together. You think about on the pork side, there's been so much collaboration, so much work that has gone into that. The whole smuggling of meat with Homeland, with border security people, so there is experience here. Mad Cow, BSE is another one where there was a lot of collaboration. So it is definitely concerning. Tyler, for you, what didn't we talk about?
I think one of the things that gets lost in kind of all of this focus about kind of where governments are and kind of the changes that are there. We got to it a little bit, but the Prime Minister has changed his cabinet committees. And it's always a good gauge of how much power and influence someone has. And I will point out that it doesn't seem like Minister MacDonald is top at the list of that. And so, again, people may not think a lot about cabinet committees, but a lot of us that are in Ottawa do. And it's interesting to see, again, where the different power players fit into it. The other thing that, again, we didn't talk about, but worth just a shout out, it's certainly not an ag issue, but the election continues on with this riding in Quebec where all of the votes didn't get counted. And I'm really interested in seeing where that goes and what that means. Again, we have a system that works very, very well. We can have so much confidence in it. But again, it's not an ag issue, Shaun, but I bet a lot of people in the West are kind of thinking about that, or should be thinking about that, and what it means for how do we make sure we can all have confidence in the outcomes of these elections.
Yeah, one vote. Yeah.
Well, and now they found evidence, or there's more returned ballots.
Yeah, five ballots where Elections Canada screwed up the address. And again, we all make mistakes, right? The errors are not completely uncommon, so we just need to make sure that our system can handle those and deal with those when they come up.
Do you think we'll have a Conservative speaker in the House of Commons so that Liberals can get all their MPs voting?
Oh, I'm really curious. My hunch is that no, we won't. That we'll still see a Liberal that's there. Again, I think this is kind of the most minority government we've ever seen. I don't get the sense that they feel that they need to worry too much about getting all of the votes lined up. But again, you've got to kind of wonder how much that they'll push things. There certainly seems to be a couple of Conservative MPs that are going to throw their hat in the ring. The question will be whether or not the Liberals think that they can give up on that and get away with one less vote.
Yeah, and so I've heard so many people say that this is going to be short-lived, and this government's going to fall. I'm taking the over. We're settling in here. At least that's the perception that I have in the early days. Minority government operating as a majority. So go ahead.
We've talked about how there does still seem to be some perceived change in this Liberal government in terms of focusing on efficiency and productivity and cutting red tape. Do we see, which are ideas that Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives have been pushing for a long time, and do we see Conservatives vote in support of Liberal legislation? Does Carney go to the Conservatives for support to get stuff across the finish line? I'm curious. That's something that we never really saw under the Trudeau regime. I'm curious whether the Conservatives will admit that some of these ideas are in line with what they'd like to achieve as well, and vote in favor of Liberal legislation in the upcoming votes.
There could be some really interesting tests of Pierre Poilievre's willingness to play in the sandbox, and there is a lot of stories out there about his unwillingness previous to now. I had once heard a really good story about him and Bill Morneau going for lunch one time when they were on the finance committee. So that's gonna be fascinating. Tyler, what do you think?
Yeah, I think if you go back to Stephen Harper's minority governments, again, he got support from a variety of different opposition parties, depending on what the issue was. And I think that we'll see more of that. I mean, it's worth pointing out the Trudeau government did not do a lot that would be worth supporting from a Conservative perspective. That's not a huge surprise that the Conservatives did not want to play ball. Clearly, we've got more of an alignment. Again, arguably, a lot of the hallmarks of the Liberal platform were pulled right out of the Conservative playbook, and so it does make more sense. I think there's this bigger question around, do we want an opposition leader that just opposes all of the time, which has been...
This is what I was thinking. Yeah. This is a leader trying to potentially change look more prime ministerial as the leader of the opposition, right? And one of the critiques were why you look at some of the exit polls, some Canadians said, I just never really saw him as a PM-like. And so does he try to rebrand himself in this moment with maybe an opportunity with a Liberal government that's a little bit more to the center? That maybe opens a door for him to actually do that. Time will tell, and we'll have to see. And probably issue by issue is a factor here. Like there's issues to do that on, there's probably issues not to do it on.
And again, I think if the Prime Minister is serious about permitting pipelines and reform, that support's going to need to come from the Conservative Party to get that over the line. So hopefully they can work something out.
Kelvin, we had good news this week on the biofuel front. We're still waiting for the details on the RVOs and whether they're not going to be 5.25. But on 45Z, the House Ways and Means Committee, they did an approval here where one of the big concerns has been domestic feedstock use, which would push out Canadian-produced feedstocks from participating in U.S. biofuel policy. That changed this week, where there is now an acknowledgement Canada, U.S., and Mexico qualify for domestic feedstock use. This is a big deal.
Yeah, that's a win for oilseed crops north of the border, and certainly for canola. And the big question, though, or the other hurdle that needs to be cleared is the carbon intensity score for canola, whether canola can qualify for those credits. That's something that we're still seeking some clarity on, where canola fits in with what was passed at the House Ways and Means Committee this week. It is still a positive story, though, for canola in terms of restrictions on keeping that Chinese used cooking oil out of the U.S., because that's got to be displaced by something domestic, and certainly that will support the market, if nothing else, even if it's not directly canola that's going into that.
Well, and on that note, Canada and Mexico better pay attention here, making sure that UCO is not being funneled through Mexico and Canada to U.S. That would be called stubbing your toe. You finally got what you wanted here on this being included in the domestic. Let's not be a part of those kinds of activities, and the push out of the expiration date as well. And that's good from a capital perspective, right? You can't ask companies to be investing hundreds of millions of dollars in these facilities and the infrastructure for only, the political rug to be pulled out from underneath them in a couple of years. We need some longevity to this. And of course there is, we'll see what comes out of the Senate on this front, but I think this was a good win this week for biofuels. Sorry, Tyler.
We just need the budget bill to get through Congress, and it looks like this morning the House Budget Committee did not move the budget bill forward. So they
delayed the vote.
Yeah, it looks like Republicans in Congress have got a lot more work to do before they can all get on the same page. And as much as we talk about different perspectives and parties in Canada, it is continuously I'm amazed at how diverse the perspectives are inside Congress.
Yeah, well, there's the Chip Roys of the world that they'll argue against what day of the week it is. I think, from the conversation that we had on AgriTalk today, it really feels like much of a foregone conclusion that this is going to pass. Republicans will pass it. If they don't, I'll use a Jim Wiesmeyer quote: at the midterms, the Republicans will be conferencing in a closet. There'll be so few of them. So it's pretty important that it does happen. So yeah, interesting stuff. Fascinating. There's so much going on. Sorry, go ahead.
What are you and Tyler going to disagree on here, though? We got to find something.
Well, there is the day of the week. It is Friday, so we can't really do that. I don't know. He likes to poke the bear sometimes. He knows what those issues are, and he just needles.
Well, I mean, again, I think I have the strong sense that Canada's better together. Shaun maybe disagree sometime. I know that's the easy one to go back to, Kelvin. I think maybe where Shaun and I would disagree is how much change there actually is in the Carney government. Was an interesting thing this week where, from a numbers perspective, there's significant change in turnover in cabinet, but you kind of look at who's there and you go, well, it doesn't seem very different from how it was before. Yeah. So Shaun probably is of the view that there's not much change. And again, I think I err on the side of, I think that there's enough different faces around that table that it's going to look and act a lot different than it was before.
Well, the people sitting in the front row, they sure look the same.
Was it LeBlanc, Guilbeault, Joly, Champagne, Fraser, all retreads.
Same group.
I mean, again, it's but do you call that retreads or do you call that experience with how government works? And again, you can maybe really super clear with everybody. I think that the Trudeau government's record on results is very, very poor. And so if these guys were big believers in that, then that's not part of the solution. But I think that the former Prime Minister gets a lot of credit, and his office get a lot of credit for the lack of results at the end of the day. So hopefully, with new marching orders, those experienced ministers can help get stuff done for Canadians.
They have a window. I think that's important here, is that there is a window here for them to act on a wide variety of files. And I really hope that they don't fall into the little bit more talk and not take this opportunity where Canadians are falling a little bit out of their culture. Hey, we want to do some stuff. Let's go. Diversify trade, pipelines, economic activity, productivity, efficiency, driving GDP, all these kinds of things where okay, we're okay with this. This could be a little bit hard, but we'll do it. I really hope they take advantage of that and grab onto it and move on it. But the jury's out on that. Like, it's still too early.
You know, one of the benefits of the U.S. system is that we know that window effectively goes to midterm elections. We don't have those, Shaun. So what's that window in this context?
Okay, that's interesting because I was going to ask the same question. What is that window? Well, I think there could be milestones. I think the first milestone is, and this is probably applying a little bit of a when there's a new CEO, they talk about, hey, that there's books written about those first 100 days. We've heard the president talk a lot about the first 100 days. Rollins has talked a lot about the first 100 days. So I would think the first milestone here, what do you do in the first 100 days? What does that look like? Is the tone different? Is the follow-through different? Are there signs that, okay, yeah, I can grab a hold on this. I may have voted one way, but I have an appetite here. I'm liking what I'm seeing. Or is it the Stephen Guilbeault, what we saw this week, where it's like, incredibly disheartening to a lot of people what we heard out of his mouth this week?
And I think given where we're at with summer holidays, it's less about 100 days and more about when they come back in September, what can they point to for progress? That's when that will get real.
And there have been some promises made on tax cut legislation, and interprovincial trade before summer kind of thing, before July 1st. So we'll have to see whether you can follow through. And I think delaying a budget or not having a budget is part of trying to extend this window, because a budget would, probably given economic performance, the fact that we're not actually collecting tariffs and there isn't that revenue that was projected in terms of incoming revenue from tariffs, the books would not look as good as and would not reflect as it would take some of the competency bonus that Carney currently carries. I think it would, like, that's the question, is how long he can carry this idea that he is the most competent person and is just, his intelligence is what made him prime minister, and that is going to wear away over time, and it's a matter of how long it takes to wear away in a political world.
Okay, but also don't use the summer break as like an excuse to okay, yeah. So how do you utilize that time? And I think it gets back to that face-to-face, the boots on the ground. Let's go out and hear from people. Maybe you can't spend as much time at the lake. We haven't been in Parliament all bloody winter. We've been
prorogued. And it was dysfunctional. It was dysfunctional all fall. It was frozen all fall. So we haven't had real. Well, we haven't had a budget now in a long time, and we haven't had functioning Parliament in a long time.
Yeah, I got into a bit of a back and forth with some former colleagues about kind of the boots on the ground. In my mind, getting out and meeting people is less important for the new ag minister than staying in Ottawa and getting results and getting actions. But I think ultimately he needs to do both. And that's where, in my mind, there's the sprint to the July FPT meeting. He's got to get out, talk to farmers, meet his counterparts, hear what their priorities are. And then after July, after that mid-July meeting, it's, okay, now we need to push more things forward so that when the fall comes, we start to see action.
Okay, so this is good. I think so. It's the pace of it too. So we know this in the prior government. That would be after 7:00. I think we need the cadence and the pace of this can really pick up, and that's something I think Carney could really push the envelope on. Is here's the outcomes that we're searching for. Here's what we need to do. Here's the timeline. Meet it. Instead of summer break and maybe we'll get to the budget in October. I think the expectations need to jump up here and meet some of these objectives on a almost like a business sort of pace. I think that's what Carney could really bring to this, is a little bit of a snappier attitude in terms of the time and what our expectations are to meet some of these milestones.
I think that expectation is there. I think that's one of the reasons people voted for them, expecting that.
And something that where they have not been super fast on is appointing political staff. So this, again, doesn't matter to most people out there, but something that I think about a lot, having been a political staffer. They've taken some decisive steps on staffing, but they're giving themselves some more space before they lock things in permanently. And it will be interesting to see over the next couple of weeks, when do we get confirmation who the PM's chief of staff is, who the minister's chief of staffs are, and how the rest of those offices get staffed up. So they've got teams that are there working on them, but by all accounts, those teams may change. And so I hope that the political staff are extra motivated to get stuff done over the next couple of weeks so they get to maintain the positions they're in.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Kelvin.
Tyler, what are you hearing about the enthusiasm about working for this Liberal government? When Trudeau came to power, there was enormous enthusiasm, and they had a whole crop, tons of new people working in government, and they kind of eroded away over time, where there wasn't much depth left in kind of the more political appointed type positions, hired in ministers' offices, that type of thing. At the end of the Trudeau era, now Carney has turned their fortunes around so quickly. Is there renewed enthusiasm about working in government, and is there depth there in terms of building that capacity here quickly?
Yeah, I think that there is, by all accounts, and there's again an interesting challenge where there's also enthusiasm from some. So there's enthusiasm for people that were outside of government or that maybe had been in government in the early days of Trudeau that are maybe interested in going back. But there's also enthusiasm with some of those people that were with Trudeau up to the end. And I think the question for the Prime Minister and his office now is, how do you actually get some of those people that were around that weren't part of the solution, that weren't action oriented enough out of government to make space for more new blood? One of the interesting things that I've heard, some of the names that are floating around it, there's a lot of Liberal stalwarts, but also there's what would have been red Tories or blue Liberals from back of the day that are around. I had somebody tell me that a lot of the leadership in the Prime Minister's office today are effectively progressive conservatives. And it's interesting to see kind of how that circles through, because a lot of the Trudeau crew definitely were not of that kind of blue Liberal mindset. And so I think that if they're going to really lean into that, then they're going to need to make changes.
I think that if I was in the AFC comms department, Kelvin, I would do those. I would come up with a different name. I'm not sure I like the name, but I like the idea of at the end of every week, Brooke Rollins does those videos on Instagram, which here are the 5 things we did this week. I think that I would take a page out of that if I was Mr. MacDonald.
You need the right minister, and we'll have to see whether Minister MacDonald is capable of that. I would say Minister McCauley, that would not have been his strong suit to make that kind of video. If Cody Blois had stayed in the position, I think he would have done well in terms of having those types of snapshots of the top 5 things I did this week kind of thing. It's good social media. And we even saw USDA this week issue what I would describe as like a hype video, like you see from a college football team or NHL fan of a team in the playoffs releasing this kind of highlight reel with epic music and that kind of thing. And we saw USDA publishing that type of thing. It's certainly something that U.S. is certainly a lot. It seems like it's a lot more of a thing in U.S. politics. Canadian Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada would never come close to having that type of content produced on its social media. But there certainly is room to improve communications from the federal ag department to stakeholders.
I think if anything, we're getting a little bit out of our shelves. Let's be bold. Here's what we're doing. We are making stuff happen. I think that would be very good messaging coming out of this government, because I think one of you had said, this is one of the reasons that people voted this way, is they felt that there would be action. And so lean into that. Really lean into it. Sorry.
Except you need to avoid the temptation to try and do a million things. Right. I really think that if the minister wants to have an impact, it needs to be focus. And again, that's one of the issues that the last government had, was that they were all over the place doing very little on everything. I really think that this new minister needs to pick 5 priorities and focus on getting things done. And maybe what his video is, here's the one thing I did on those 5 things every week to show how we're moving forward. But, one of the problems we have with stakeholder groups, ag associations in this country, everybody's got their list of 15 or 20 priorities. And we don't do a very good job saying across the sector, here's what our priorities are, or here's our 2 priorities that really matter. And the minister needs to avoid the trap of feeling that he needs to answer everybody's top 10 priorities, or he will get nothing done for anybody.
It'll be a great sign to me, this is my opinion, if they can produce a video like that, because the velocity at which Rollins and USDA is putting those videos out, Nothing against our comms people in Canada that work with Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. I know many of them, and the fact that you could turn something around in a day, not happening unless there's a culture change. If we can get it out in less than 30 days, we'll be doing well, and that'll signify a change in our Canadian government's culture.
The problem we have in government today in Canada is that there's lots of really good, smart people there that are capable of doing these things. But boy, the system is stacked against them, and boy, does it not reward people that aim to get things done. And so that is absolutely something that, and again, there's in my list of 5 things a minister needs to do. He needs to empower the department so that those smart people can get things done, but he also needs to hold them to account for when they don't. And that's, again, one of the problems that we've had for a decade is the bureaucracy has consistently failed to get things done, and nobody's cared. That's come up in some other contexts, but go back to OFCAF. This was this record investment that the Liberals announced because there was only 9 growing seasons left. Well, they wasted an entire growing season trying to get the program stood up and rolling. So, on one hand, you had this sense of, it's so urgent. We've only got 9 growing seasons left, but those growing seasons weren't important enough to push the money out of the door quickly. And so that is something that, again, you need to change how government works so that when they're going to commit $200 million to food processors, that it actually gets out and actually gets spent and actually gets invested.
Well, guys, we got to wrap up. This is a lot of fun. I really appreciate this. I always look forward to Friday. So appreciate it. Kelvin, have yourself a great weekend.
Thanks. Take care, everyone. Go Leafs.
Well, Kelvin,
one last chance.
One last chance. Well, even with all the support you're given from Biz, you it's still he even went back to Ontario to watch the game, and it still didn't. The blowout. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that was disappointing. They need culture change there too.
Is it May long or May 2-4, Kelvin?
I call it May long weekend.
Yeah, because you're right.
Actually, the Her Majesty Queen Victoria's weekend, something like that, right?
You're a British loyalist, are you?
Monarchist, yes.
I never knew that about Kelvin Heppner. Tyler, May long or May 2-4?
I think both, but I would have said May 2-4 if you were asked. So maybe this is again an area where we're divided. I just hope that farmers across the country have made good enough progress that on Monday maybe they can find some time to put their feet up, crack a cold one, and enjoy a bit of a break.
Well, one of the questions that I asked farmers in the Farmer Rapid Fire was, okay, Kelvin, you're going to cook some meat. Are you grilling? Are you smoking? Are you going to Blackstone? What are you doing?
This time of year, hot dogs on the fire, making a fire.
Oh, a campfire.
Yeah, sitting around.
That wasn't even one of the options.
Because you can do we've done the other things. We do them in winter too, but this is the time of year where the fire thing is still a novelty again.
Yeah, well, just reminded me of the great outdoors. You know what's in hot dogs, don't you? Tyler, are you grilling? Are you Blackstone? Or you have a campfire too? Or what are you doing?
Well, so I'm a big hot dog on the campfire fan. It turns out Kelvin and I agree on something here for once. But the issue is nobody else in my house likes campfire hot dogs. So we don't get that very often. This is my kids they boiled hot dogs and I do not. But give me a campfire with some hot dogs on it any day of the week.
Nice. Oh, good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, reminds me of my days as a bachelor. What's for supper? Katie and some chopped up hot dogs.
Microwaved or boiled? What are you putting on the grill here this weekend, Shaun?
I think we are. Well, we're getting together as a family. My brother-in-law is going to be here, so I'm assuming he likes to smoke a brisket because he's committed to those marathon cooks. I think we've got some steaks we're going to grill. Yeah, it's gonna be fun. There'll be a variety, but lots of meat. We'll be supporting all the categories. Don't worry, everybody. There will be everything. So.
And Shaun, what are you drinking alongside it?
Well, depends what we're having for supper. So that steak.
This is the high risk, low reward question.
Yeah, exactly.
Tyler's type of question.
Yeah, some red wine. There will be some beer. It'll be good. Yeah, it'll be good. Yourself?
I'm a big Coors Original guy myself.
Coors Heavy, as they say in Colorado.
Yeah, not like that watery Bud Light garbage, but
I do like a good Michelob Ultra, though. I will say that, and I like Modelo. I like Modelo with a lime. It's pretty good.
Yeah. Sleeman's maybe is what we should all be drinking. Support Canadian or Japanese, depending on how you count that. But
well, the beer industry is very complicated because like all of these American beers that people are trying to boycott, and the fact that
they're made in Canada,
Western Canadian barley, or they're bottled in Ontario. Like some of those boycotts are so foolish. They don't. It speaks against the integrated supply chain that we talk so much about. So, good stuff. Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for getting real and getting connected with RealAg Radio, and have yourself a great May long weekend, and 2-4 for those of you in Central Eastern Canada. Cheers, everybody.